Joined in the studio now by Dr. Angela Wilkinson, the Secretary General and CEO of the World Energy Council, and Extinction Rebellion co-founder and activist Clare Farrell. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. First of all, Angela Wilkinson, what has happened over the last 2 days? Does that increase your sense of urgency?
A sense of urgency about energy transition in general, of course, because the energy system, the global energy system, has been rocked by a series of crises: COVID, climate change, and this cost of living crisis. So we know that the system, which has taken over a century to build, is no longer functioning. It's fragile, it's vulnerable, so we need to change it.
And need to change it for the good of the planet, or indeed to get to net zero by 2050 in the UK?
They're not different goals. What we need to do is change it for the benefit of more people and the planet. We need more energy for billions of better lives and for sustainable development. We want an industry and an economy as well as a healthy planet.
Do you believe in net zero by 2050?
I think net zero by X is a great goal, but the devil is in the detail.
I mean, that is surely that's a year that people can kind of look forward to, in the true sense of looking forward to and planning for it.
Well, it's net zero by 2060 for China, it's net zero by 2050 for the UK, it's net zero by 20x for some other countries. They're all putting forward what they think are realistic, achievable targets. We might not like those dates, but that's what they think is realistic to deliver.
And you think for the UK it's realistic to be net zero by 2050, as the Prime Minister reiterated today?
The UK's target is net zero by 2050, and there are plenty of ways of getting to that.
Right, plenty of ways of getting to that. Let's talk about Extinction Rebellion, Clare Farrell. Surely what's happened today has shown that you must take as many people with you as possible. And in that sense, is it time to end the acts of criminal damage? For example, there was an attack on News UK today because of what the Sun was saying about climate change. Windows are broken. That is criminal damage. Is that part of your past?
Well, no, I don't think it is, obviously, because people in our movement feel that it's necessary to escalate their actions. You have to bear in mind we've had thousands of people arrested, thousands of people through the courts. We're the biggest civil disobedience movement since the suffragettes, and all this government has done, rather than actually speak to us, deal with what we're bringing forwards, they've decided just to try and criminalise what we do and legislate against us.
But if you're breaking windows in people's private property, it is criminal damage. And I wonder, in terms of bringing general citizenship with you, because maybe it's not just about talking to government, it's about getting a mass movement, like, I mean, this is not facetious, but like Dig for Britain in the war. It's like getting people to come along with you.
Yeah, and people do need to come along this journey with us, and I think right now, like they were with the floods in Germany, people are petrified about the failure to act, and the criminal damage which has been enacted on the planet and on the futures of young people is an absolute travesty. You know, we are being led by people who are completely corrupt and deranged, frankly. Like, this is not a situation where people can sit and say 1.2 degrees is basically fine and we can let it get worse. We're already in grave danger. People are very, very frightened, and for good reason.
And Dr. Wilkinson, I wonder what you think about the idea of turning this into some kind of mass movement. If people don't necessarily want to support one politician or the other, they need to do it for themselves and for their own families. I mean, when we look at the extreme heat, you know, it was 2003, the last heat wave legislation, or last the heat wave plan. We're falling behind.
Yeah, I think I'd agree, mass mobilisation. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's about useful energy and users and uses of energy. It's not just about suppliers. So we have to get more people involved, and they have to better understand their role and the choices that they're facing. That's why we have a humanising energy imperative globally in 100 countries, involving more people in diverse communities in progressing energy transitions at all levels of society.
So do you think that you actually have things in common with Extinction Rebellion?
Not in terms of criminality, no, but in terms of positive and constructive mobilisation, in terms of compassionate collaboration, yes. We all know that you can't achieve global energy transition just from within the classic energy sectors. You have to involve adjacent sectors, you have to involve all the users, people have to understand their roles, and you have to manage something called the energy trilemma. You can't focus on one crisis or issue at a time.
No, but when you talk about energy transition, we heard earlier that, you know, Liz Truss is talking about the end of a moratorium on fracking, for example. Mm-hmm. Would you see that as a backwards move?
In this, I think that fracking is a preference issue. If the UK doesn't want fracking, it won't have fracking. There are other countries that are looking at fracking. I think it's time to stop thinking about technology prescription. I think it's time to start talking about low carbon solutions, which are demand driven, not just supply centric.
Clare.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the major problems we've got in this country, I think, is that, you know, the dereliction of duty on the part of the media to help the public understand. Before we came in, we were talking about the first report that is on the record about global warming from carbon emissions is from the 1800s. The people have had plenty enough time to understand this issue. The government haven't helped anybody to understand it, and we're in an abject accountability crisis. It's still OK for the banks to invest hundreds of billions. It's still OK for the government to fail on their targets. It's still OK for them to be found guilty, apparently, in the High Court of having a totally catastrophically poor plan that can't meet what they say they're going to meet.
So it didn't have enough detail, to be fair.
So, well, but you see what I'm saying? Like, whose fault is it? People are going to start to ask these questions because a lot of people have already died this summer. More people will die from more disasters, and we know where this is going, and people are going to start to want justice, aren't they?
Thank you both very much indeed.